Hi there, my name is Fiona and I was once a chronic insomniac. It used to take me hours to fall asleep every single night, and for a very long time I tried everything that I was told to try. I did sleep hygiene, I spoke to my doctor, I took prescription strength medication for a very long time. I did supplements, I changed my bedtime routine, I meditated, I did breath work, I did more yoga, I stopped seeing friends at night, you name it. I tried it, including CBTI. I also tried CBTI for a very long time, and that also did not work. To say the least, I felt very broken, and I truly believed for a very long time that insomnia was going to be my life sentence. Well, now, at the time of filming this video, I can confidently say that I am fully recovered from insomnia. Not only have I fully removed the fear associated with not sleeping, but I sleep better than I have ever slept in my whole entire life. And I'm telling you this because it is possible. And in today's video, I want to break down the mindset shifts and what I needed to actually do and actually learn in order to finally achieve long-term recovery. And if you are watching this and you are currently struggling with sleep, it is not your fault. You do not need to try harder. You do not need to logic with your brain. And trust me, the solution for insomnia is very different to what you have tried before. And it also gets to be a lot easier than you think. And before I jump into explaining how I finally overcame insomnia, I do want to briefly address how and why it took me so long to actually get there to begin with. Because I know that this is a reality that is true for 99% of insomniacs who struggle with insomnia over a longer period of time. And that is because common sleep advice doesn't actually address the root cause. For someone like us, or for someone like me, I'm a type A perfectionist type of person. I normally see problems as something I simply need to overcome. It isn't something that I just say to myself, okay, well, that's just the way things are. And when I first started struggling with sleep, it was no different. I said to myself, okay, this is definitely very uncomfortable, but I know that this is not my life sentence. Like, I refuse to live like this. So, of course, I tried to optimize my sleep. I saw not sleeping as a problem to solve, and I had very high standards as to what solving that problem looked like. And the problem with that is that you are addressing insomnia from the symptom perspective and not from the root cause. And common sleep advice, including advice from my doctor, or advice from my therapist, or advice from everybody who I had around me, was all around optimizing and fixing, again, that the symptom of the problem. It was implying that sleep could be controlled. And I think that that was like the biggest thing that I had to learn over a long period of time, was that sleep isn't a controllable outcome. We wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be watching this video if you were able to control sleep. Because up until now, I'm sure that you have tried maybe CBTI, sleep hygiene, medication, supplements, whatever you have tried, you can fill in the blank, and it hasn't actually worked. And that is because by being told to take a pill or to just relax, it doesn't address the deep rooted seed that is insomnia. Insomnia is rooted in our central nervous system. It is not a logic problem, it is a survival problem, meaning that our brain and body has, over the course of time and over the course of many sleepless nights, has internalized that the fact that you're not sleeping is a problem. And when that happens, you're actually activating your central nervous system. You're making yourself more awake. And when you try and approach this as a problem that needs to be solved, you're continuously reconfirming to your brain not sleeping is a problem. Every time you try harder, every time you try a new hack, every time you try and avoid a plan in the evening, that is you actually telling your brain and actually your amygdala and your central nervous system, this is a problem that needs to be solved. However, it is paradoxical. You're always going to fall into this loop cycle because you think the problem needs to be solved, yet the problem is not solved through control, meaning that you're continuously playing cat and mouse. You will never be able to catch up to one or the other. And for a very long time, I felt so unbelievably broken. I would think to myself, how can it be that I can solve so many of life's other challenges and not this one? And I didn't know it at the time, but that was because I was approaching this situation very differently to what was actually needed. I was unaware that my state of hyperarousal was my body stuck in fight or flight. I was unaware that I had a sleep anxiety issue that was rooted in the fear of what would happen if I did not sleep. And most importantly, I was stuck trying to control something that wasn't controllable to begin with. And that is because my default mode to solve and approach every single problem that I had approached in life before was through control. It was through execution. It was through a to-do list. And it took me a very, very long time to realize it, but I needed the opposite to how I was solving problems in the past to actually solve insomnia. So it's safe to say that overcoming insomnia did not come easy. This took a very, very long time for me to realize. And I now know that I couldn't have found this experience or overcoming insomnia without having tried to solve it in so many other ways before. I wish I could say that overcoming insomnia also meant that I had found somebody's recovery story, or I had read an article, or I had met someone who overcame insomnia naturally. But that wasn't my reality. I know that that's reality of so many other people who find success stories on platforms like this one. But I don't know why, but at the time, I did not find those resources. I found other resources on YouTube that pointed me in the direction of CBTI and sleep hygiene. And I searched and searched for more answers, but those were the only ones that I found. So for me, finally overcoming insomnia came through the means of an intervention with my family. I had been struggling with insomnia for a very long time. I had also come to the point where I didn't really want to speak about my struggles with sleep with anybody around me because I felt like nobody truly understood what I was going through. But still, the evidence of having struggled or that I was struggling were there. I came to visit my family in Colombia, and I was, living by the ocean in a beautiful location. Honestly, everything, I couldn't have been more grateful. Really, like I'm very, very grateful for my life. I get to do such amazing things, and I don't take those for granted. But looking back then, or at my experience then when I came to visit them, I just wasn't myself. And I have a very close relationship with my parents and also my sister. And I again wasn't sleeping for the whole entirety of the time that I came to visit them. Before actually flying to Colombia, I had been teaching yoga on a yoga retreat, and I kid you not, but I did not sleep for the entire time that I was there. I felt delusional. I couldn't understand how I was teaching 2-hour classes in the morning and having to bring all of this energy to a yoga retreat and still not sleeping. And then of course, fast forward, I came to Colombia straight after, and I just wasn't myself. I was irritable. I'm usually a very happy and positive person, and I just was not that version of me at the time. I was irritable. I felt like sleep was this very fragile thing. I was convinced that I needed to do CBTI. I used to get frustrated when I couldn't maybe follow the rules of CBTI, and I felt that being around family and in somebody else's home, even though it was, of course it's my home as well, but it's my parents' apartment, I felt like I was more out of control than usual. And my parents sat me down, and my sister actually, the four of us sat down, and they expressed their concern for me. And I I had a massive breakdown. I cried a lot, and I expressed how difficult this had been for me for a very, very long time. And I was telling them how I was determined to solve this problem. That had been my perspective up until that point. And through their intervention, and it's funny, they've never really struggled with sleep, and specifically my sister has never struggled with sleep. And she said to me, maybe you need to stop trying so hard. And I don't know why. I think sometimes you receive the right message at the right time. But those words changed everything for me. They made me realize, wow, I've been putting all of my focus on sleep. And clearly, up until now, sleep hasn't been the outcome of my efforts. In her saying, maybe you need to stop focusing on sleep so much and start focusing on other things that you can control, maybe you'll notice a shift in your attitude. Maybe you'll notice a shift in your anxiety. And that was like a light bulb moment for me. Not that I finally started sleeping well all of a sudden, but it did make me realize that I had a lot more power in my own well-being than I was giving myself credit for. I had been putting so much reliance on sleep to determine whether or not I felt energized or if I could show up for my life, when in reality, it was never sleep to begin with. It was my interpretation of that experience. And that dialogue and that conversation triggered just a bit of change for me. I started thinking, okay, I've never had issues with sleep prior to this situation. How would I approach sleep if I were someone who didn't struggle with insomnia? And now as a certified coach, like I see all of the change and everything that I was learning in that moment. But in that moment, all I knew was, okay, I wasn't struggling with sleep before. How would I approach sleep as somebody who doesn't struggle with sleep? And that was massive because it made me realize, like, wow, I actually don't need the bedtime routines. I can reclaim my night. I can enjoy my day. And little did I know at the time, but this is the act of befriending wakefulness. This is the act of reteaching your central nervous system that wakefulness isn't a real threat. It is only a perceived threat. I noticed that I didn't need to escape my anxiety, that I could actually allow my anxiety to be there without actually reacting. And following up from that intervention, things started getting better for me. Not because I immediately started sleeping, but because my experience of not sleeping was shifting. And I say this to all of my clients, that oftentimes it isn't sleep that comes back first. You're not going to be able to nap all of a sudden. But what you are going to experience is that your perspective on not sleeping is going to change. You're going to feel less tired because you feel like you're not judging yourself based on how little you sleep. I felt like I could reclaim my evenings. I felt like I didn't need the supplements anymore, or that I didn't need to compulsively meditate or do breath work. And that was the most powerful and empowering shift that I could have had in my insomnia recovery journey. It was realizing that I did not need more, I needed less. And I needed to grant myself the self-kindness and compassion to allow myself to just be free of effort. And if my story is somewhat resonating with yours, but you still want a little bit of a deeper dive as to what the cycle of insomnia actually is and how you too can break the cycle, then I'm going to invite you to watch my free 30-minute masterclass below that explains all of this in so much more detail. So I hope this has given you a little bit of hope, because I know what it feels like to be in that position in which you have tried everything. You have looked for the advice. So many of the clients that I speak to, our conclusion is always how there isn't the right support out there. And that is not your fault. Most doctors are not even trained on sleep, and most therapists are trained on CBTI, and they are not taught about the deep-rooted ways out of sleep anxiety and the cycle of hyperarousal. So if you're watching this and you feel like you are done with trying, then let that be your guide. Ask yourself, if this weren't an issue, if you weren't struggling with sleep, how would you approach your days? How would you approach your evenings? Oftentimes it means seizing life or going after life despite not sleeping. And it can feel uncomfortable to feel tired, and it can feel uncomfortable for the thoughts and the emotions to be there. I'm not discrediting that. But trust me, when you start shifting your perspective from controlling sleep to controlling other things, like what you do with your time, how you process your thoughts and emotions. Are you making time for them? Are you just pushing them away? Are you doing things with the effort of making sleep happen? Just ask yourself, would someone who isn't struggling with sleep, would they do this? Would a previous version of me do this? Why do you think that you need to control sleep? Why can't you trust your body to do that all by yourself? And I know that that may not come easy and it may not come tonight or tomorrow night, but it does come through the repetitive action and the repetitive questioning of your current situation. Because the more you actually question your motives and your behaviors associated with trying to control sleep, the more you're actually reteaching your central nervous system and your brain that wakefulness isn't actually a threat. And the more that you teach your brain and body that, the less hyperarousal you will feel, the less thoughts and emotions you will feel, and the easier it's going to be for you to sleep. Anyway, that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have specific insomnia related or sleep related questions, please go ahead and drop them in the comments below, and I promise to get back to you. Bye.